All right, good morning, everybody. So obviously I'm alive and running. I'll just a little early. I'll wait for some people to get on board, and then we'll continue with our lecture on low carb lies, on low carb nonsense, and what the research has to say. And happy to bring that to you, of course. So just wait for people to get on board, and then I will begin. So hopefully everyone's having a good Sunday so far. And once we get a few people up, I'll get you to let me know that you can see and hear me just fine. And then we'll go from there. So yeah, let me know you can see and hear me good, or see and hear me well. And we will continue from there. So morning, everybody. People coming on board. So glad to see everybody up and at 'em. Depending on where you are in the world, it can be either very, very early, like it is here, or it could be mid-afternoon to late evening. So I take it no one's having a problem hearing me and seeing me, so that's a good thing. We're just going to wait for the numbers to building fast today. Holy cow, not like last week. So this is good. Yeah, great. I'm waiting for people to get on board. And then I will begin with the continuing lecture series on low carb lies and nonsense. One of the things you need to know, we're probably down to about 3 more lectures, give or take how long it takes me to get through these. So I think within the next 2-3 weeks I'll be done with this, and then you can spread the word, send people here or to the YouTube channel to watch them all in sequence. Tons of research, tons of academic stuff. I want to get to a lot of that. Today is going to be about low carb lies and your health. We're going to cover a lot of ground. So once everything builds, I'm going to get started. So just wait for a few more people, although the numbers are doing pretty well. So hello to everybody out there. So I'm glad everyone can see and hear me just fine. So I wonder how many of you saw the post I made on Facebook yesterday of the latest research also debunking low carb diets. They specifically went after that low carb argument about carbs and insulin and why you get fat, something I addressed a couple lectures ago, a couple Sundays ago. Hopefully you all saw that and read that article, read that link about the best kind of study you can actually do when looking at diets and nutrition, the kind of controlled study that they did. And once again shows that the whole low carb argument is full of holes and way over exaggerated, as you can see. So it's just, I call that synchronicity. It seems to be whenever I take a stand on something, the pop culture Vogue trend followers come out and attack me, and then within weeks or months, academic research seems to come out and back me up. But I've been giving you guys the research all along, so this was just happened to be something that was, again, synchronous to our arguments every Sunday. Lo and behold, the research comes out, shows that a lot of low carb hype has maybe been mistaken over the years. I'm going to tell you why when I get to the lecture. So everyone can see and hear me okay. Throw some thumbs across the screen, and I will get started with this week's lecture because there's a lot to get through, and I'd rather just get to it. So if you're seeing and hearing me okay, and you're ready for some knowledge and ready for some information and education and all that stuff, pitter patter, let's get at her. So good. Okay, we seem to be clear for landing. All right, so I want to get to it this week. I'm glad those of you saw the post I made yesterday on the latest research debunking low carb lies and nonsense and the over exaggeration of the insulin argument. So I'm going to continue along that trend today. Low carb diets and your health. I got a lot to get through. So as usual, folks, I'm going to ask you to hold off comments, and I will stop at various intervals in the lecture and come back and see if you guys have any comments to talk about. So I want to get right to it. So I'm going to get right to it. First of all, let's talk common sense here, okay? I want to start before I get into low carb lies and health, let's talk general common sense about health. All right. A lot of the times these new low carb diets, paleo and the rest of it, let's get real about getting real. A bunless burger with cheese and or bacon is not a healthy whole foods answer to a frosted cupcake. Any hint that it is just fad diet, low carb, folklore, gobbledygook nonsense. To pretend that you're going to give up the candy, cakey snacks and choose bacon instead because you're now low carbing it for health's sake, that's just still wildly pretending that you're taking your health and your weight seriously. So I remember this reminded me of a story a couple of years ago. I was in the Calgary airport, and a family came in, a grandmother, a mother, and a young daughter, and sat beside me at a restaurant in the Calgary airport. And the grandmother was massively overweight. She needed one of those electric airport conveyor chairs to get around. But she was one of these loud talkers who wanted everyone to hear everything she had to say. And she gets to the restaurant, she sits down, and she demands a gluten-free menu because she's on a gluten-free paleo diet, and it's essential that she eats right and all this stuff. And then she proceeds to making sure everyone can hear her. And then she proceeds to order bacon-wrapped steak bites for her appetizer, and then a Caesar salad, but take out the croutons and add extra bacon and extra dressing. And then she ordered the bunless burger because she's on paleo and gluten-free. So it's this kind of nonsense where people want to pretend that they're taking their health and their weight seriously. It's this kind of nonsense that drives me insane. So let's have a little common sense about what healthy whole foods really are. And then let's take it from there. So in terms of the father of low carb nonsense, the longer people stayed on Atkins diets, the worse they seemed to do. And that's from an article by J.D. Foster. The article is titled A Randomized Trial of Low Carbohydrate Diet for Obesity. That's from the New England Journal of Medicine, issue number 348, 2003. Of course, I call that kind of thing metabolic adaptation or metabolic compensation, and I've explained that phenomenon in several of my books. Now, let's get to the point. None, and I repeat that, none, capital N-O-N-E, of the 3 longest studies on Atkins diets, low-carb diets, showed any advantage over the higher carb diets that Atkins blamed for making everyone fat. And this is what we saw in the article that I posted, the research that I posted yesterday as well. So we see for decades a debunking and of low-carb diets that they've never worked, and I'm going to get to that near the end. So any long-term study of low-carb diets, as we saw in what I posted on Facebook yesterday, as well as this New England Journal of Medicine article, shows that none of the 3 longest studies show any advantage of low-carb diets over higher carb diets. So the way you sell books is to point a finger and demonize something and then say you've got an alternative. So it's utterly ridiculous. Another article that speaks to that is from L. Stern, A.L., and the name of the article, the research is The Effects of Low Carbohydrate versus Conventional Weight Loss Diets in Severely Obese Adults, 1-year follow-up of a randomized trial. That's from the Annals of Internal Medicine, issue number 140, 2004. Another one that addresses the long-term effects or the long-term demystification of low-carb diets is from M. Fumento, and it's called Fad Diet Failures, and I think I quoted this last week, and that's from Scripps Howard News Service in 2003. On the other side of disproving low-carb nonsense, there's also plenty of research and discussion of people who have actually succeeded in taking weight off and keeping it off for more than 10 years. Long-term, sustainable weight loss. That's what we need to be talking about. This kind of research also gives us facts and clues as to what works and what doesn't in terms of viability. My own business advisor, business manager, editor, and all-around good guy, Dr. Mike, PhD, is one such person who's lost 100 pounds and kept it off, and he does so with a carb-based diet. We've got Ange tuning in today. I posted her pictures last week after my lecture. Lost up to close to 60 pounds, has kept it off for almost a decade with a carb-based diet. But to get to the research element, In her book, Eating Thin for Life, so look that up if you want, 1994, award-winning journalist and dietitian Ann Fletcher looked at the diet habits of long-term successful weight loss representatives. These people, in her book, lost an average of 65 pounds. And like I said, they've kept it off for more than a decade and counting. In other words, permanent weight loss, like the title of the book I wrote. What she found, and I quote, basically they are eating the opposite of a high-protein, low-carb diet. Let me say that again. Her conclusion, studying people that have lost more than 65 pounds and kept it off for a decade, her conclusion, they are eating the opposite of a high-protein, low-carb diet. In describing their own eating habits, these successful weight loss responders in her book reported low-fat eating habits with less meat consumption, and I'll get to that later. But what a sting that is to the paleo pundits on this one. So you got to do your homework. Moreover, in this book, Eating Thin for Life, they offered that they just began eating more fruits and vegetables, and they learned to listen to their biofeedback and reestablish a connection between their hunger and satiation feedback loops. And this just reiterates Michael Pollan's 7 words for successful and sustainable weight loss, a phrase that I've emphasized and written about and made chapters on in a few of my books. And those are 7 words: eat food, not a lot, mostly plants. That's the secret to health, the secret to wellness, the secret to a robust metabolism, and the secret to sustainable weight loss. But this simplicity just doesn't seem sexy enough for people out there who want complicated formulas and solutions to hide behind. Does it fit your macros? Are you intermittent fasting? Just forget the flour and the sugar and the processed foods, cut down on meat consumption, and that's the magic. That's a good starting point. Let's get to some more research. The Harvard University study studied 75,000 women, and it showed a correlation between more fruits and vegetables women reported eating, the less likely they were to be overweight or obese. So this isn't rocket science. A 2004 review of all the research drew the conclusion that, and I quote, increasing fruit and vegetable intake may be an important strategy for weight loss. That's from B.J. Rolls, A.L., and the research article is called, What Can Intervention Studies Tell Us About the Relationship Between Fruit and Vegetable Consumption and Weight Management? That's from the periodical Nutrition Reviews, issue number 62, 2004. And yet, do you know how many people write me from the fitness industry, mostly women, who are concerned that a diet strategy that I assigned them had too much fruit in it? Because don't you know fruit can make you fat? So once again, fad diet folklore gets trickled down on gym floors, and it tends to rule out what the research actually reveals, and that's sad and pathetic as far as I'm concerned. Let's look at some more research from another organization. The National Cancer Institute followed over 75,000 people for over a decade to find out which diet behaviors were most associated with weight loss and which diet behaviors were associated with weight gain. So they studied both weight loss and weight gain. They found the people who ate the most meat weighed the most and gained the most weight. Let me say that again. They found that the people who ate the most meat and weighed the most, they weighed the most and they gained the most weight. Conversely, the diet behavior they found most closely associated with loss of abdominal fat and sustainable weight control was high vegetable consumption. And that's from H.S. Kahn. The name of the research article is Stable Behaviors Associated with Adults, 10-Year Change in Body Mass Index and Likelihood of Gain at the Waist. And that's from the American Journal of Public Health, issue number 87, 1997. What we see here, older research is continually being ignored and has been ignored in favor of pop culture misinformation and propaganda appearing as research and fact. And when these studies use like a small population sample, like we studied 12 college-age students for 12 weeks and we found this. That's different than the kind of studies that I'm giving you now that show a massive study over a prolonged period of time debunks and disproves low-carb lies and nonsense. Now, the next one, and then I'll pause for some comments. The National Weight Control Registry, and you can type this in when we're done and look it up for yourself. This is funded by the National Institute of Health, or used to be, and maybe it isn't anymore, but when I researched it, it was. National Weight Control Registry is one of the most highly respected formal studies on long-term weight loss out there. A formal study on long-term weight loss. The Registry, which was established in 1994, has been tracking the eating and diet habits of successful dieters for years and years. They track thousands and thousands of people who can confirm to have lost an average of 70 pounds and who have kept that weight off for an average of 6 years. So permanent weight loss. One of the most common traits they found to successful long-term sustainable weight loss that they observed, and I'll quote from the chief investigator of the study here, what they found in regards to successful dieters who lost weight and kept it off, and I quote, almost nobody is on a low carbohydrate diet. Let me say that again. They studied long-term, over a decade, 6 years and beyond, people who lost weight and kept it off, and their conclusion, looking at thousands and thousands of people, almost nobody is on a low carbohydrate diet. And you can find that information in an article by M. Fumento, and the article, research article is called Big Fat Fake, the Atkins Diet Controversy and the Sorry State of Scientific Journalism. And that's from the periodical called Reason, and that's in 2003. So in fact, these researchers found that the most successful people losing weight and keeping it off were actually eating a high carbohydrate diet, 5 times as many carbs as Atkins prescribes in his weight loss phase of his diet. You can find that in ML Clem with a K, AL, and the research study is called A Descriptive Study of Individuals Successful at Long-Term Maintenance of Substantial Weight Loss. That's from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, issue number 99, 1997. So listen, I'm going to pause in a second, but let's get to the point here. You can lose water weight quickly up front and then make yourself miserable trying to stick to short-term nonsense, or you can learn from what the real successful weight loss people are actually doing. More to the point, as of 2005, of the thousands and thousands of people in the National Weight Control Registry, listen to this, less than 1% follow a diet strategy that's even remotely similar to an Atkins type of low-carb protocol or other keto diet nonsense. If low carbs really was the way to go for long-term sustainable weight loss, then don't you think a study that examines that very thing with thousands and thousands of people would reflect a greater percentage than less than 1% of participants doing it? As one of the researchers said, and listen to this, I quote, "We can't find more than a handful of people in the registry who follow an Atkins type of diet program, and believe me, we've tried." And you can find that in the research article by S. Squires, and the research article is called Experts Declare Story Low on Saturated Facts. Little play on words, or little pun. Instead of saturated fats, saturated facts. And that's from the Washington Post in 2002. So I'll pause there, see if we got any comments here. Just a lot of good mornings. So everybody soaking this in. Yeah, Tracy, I'm gonna get to the health element in a minute. I just want to keep I just want to keep going with I'm leading into the whole low carbs and health things. Yes, a lot of people are noticing the Wallabies jersey, so shout out to the people down under. Yeah, so okay, just looking at the comments. So I'm going to go back to the lecture. I'm glad you all are hanging with me this long. And yeah, I'll pause again in a couple seconds. Let me get to the next realm of the research. So I want you to look at it this way as well. Back around 2005, even before the nonsense of paleo came out and other low-carb books came to the market, listen to this, already Atkins books alone had sold over 15 million copies. Of those millions of books, think about what I said just before I paused, of those millions of books sold, the researchers in the National Weight Control Registry that monitor long-term weight loss that's sustained, they couldn't find more than a handful of low-carb dieters who could even qualify to be in the registry, right? Less than 1%, meaning those who lost substantial weight and kept it off. In fact, to qualify for the registry, you only have to prove you've lost 30 pounds and kept it off for 1 year. So in the National Weight Control Registry, think about that. You only have to prove you've lost 30 pounds and kept it off for a year. At the time, there were 26 million Americans reporting being on some kind of hardcore low-carb diet, and almost none of them qualified to be in the Registry of National Weight Control and Weight Loss. And that's from Cadlick, A.L., and the research article is called The Low Carb Frenzy, and that's from Time Magazine, May 2004. So maybe these low carb diet books should be sold in the fiction and fantasy section of your local bookstore. Or maybe you should start learning and accepting that pop culture low carb diets are all about making profits and not about your successful long-term permanent weight loss. What bugs me the most in all this is how it filters into the fitness industry, and we have these wannabe gym rats with no education, no academic background. They don't know how to do research, and they advocate whatever the vogue trend is. So every 3 to 5 years, they go from Atkins, they go to South Beach, then they go to paleo. If you've been in CrossFit, then you're a paleo, cultist as well. So we need to get real about getting real, all right? And the fact is, the academics who study people who have lost weight and kept it off, they can't find more than a handful of people that actually do low carb living. All right. Now, given that the Atkins book sold 15 million copies, don't we have a contradiction and a paradox there? If the 15 million copies was because the book was right, then there should be a reflection in people who study people who have lost weight and kept it off. Of those 15 million copies of the book sold, there should be more represented than less than 1% of those they study who actually show the opposite, that high carb diets were the secrets to weight loss and weight control. So, ironically enough, when looking at long-term sustainable weight loss, Atkins himself admitted he had no formal documentation on the long-term weight loss sustainability of his own diet. And this begs the question then, since he claims he's been saying that his patients were on his diet for decades, then why is there not some sort of records and accounting on that? Why wouldn't they keep such records right from the beginning? It would only help increase sales if it were true. So why didn't they do so? Because they know the diet was bogus for long-term sustainability. So the conclusion there is all fad diets fail, but low-carb diets particularly so. And yes, of course, I would include any kind of fad diet, even if it's carb-based, like the potato diet. Look, I wrote a chapter on how great the potato is in my book, Understanding Metabolism. I wrote a whole chapter about it. That doesn't mean you go on a potato diet and limit your diet to one single food. Your brain doesn't work that way. So we have to keep those kind of things in mind as well. I'll get to that in another lecture. But let's talk for a minute about the dangers of ketosis. I'm tired of hearing about the keto diet only in regards to weight loss, even though it's no better than a high carb diet for weight loss, but what it does to your health. So let's get into it in terms of keto diet nonsense and your health. Let's talk about, remember, ketosis is one state on the way to ketoacidosis, and you can look up what that does to your body. But let's talk with just general symptoms of being in ketosis. Muscle cramps are a common experience with ketogenic diets, and it's because of unnaturally losing too many electrolytes. As the kidneys excrete ketones, they often also excrete out critical electrolytes that balance everything, like calcium, magnesium, potassium. Combine this with drinking a lot more water to offset the diet, and you have a dangerous recipe for electrolyte losses. And don't forget, your electrolytes control the vagus nerve, which controls your heartbeat. I'll get to that in a minute as well. Atkins' solution to all of this at the time was to just take potassium supplements. Even going so far, Atkins went so far as saying over-the-counter potassium supplements may not be enough. You might need to get a doctor's prescription. And even with this, Atkins and people who want to believe in magic couldn't just see that the keto diet approach is flawed from the get-go, especially in terms of health and well-being. Even Dr. Barry Sears, author of the Zone Diet, took a swipe at Atkins when he said that. And Barry Sears said this of the Atkins diet: any meal or diet that you have to take potassium supplements, well, there's something wrong with that. Of course there's something wrong with that. Very, very dangerous to your health. And like so many other experts who discuss low-carb dieting and all the dangers to the heart muscle, like I just mentioned, and to the kidneys, as ketones excrete many other minerals along with the ketones, the Cleveland Clinic, a very esteemed and respected institution, said in regards to low-carb dieting, and I quote, "Careful monitoring of electrolytes is absolutely essential. Those who aren't professionally monitored on this kind of diet are at the greatest risk for dangerous," and I quote, "dangerous complications." And you can find the reference to all that in the book Carbophobia on page 50. Now listen to this. Symptoms of ketosis include general overall fatigue, heavy legs feeling, gradual or abrupt weakness, dizziness, brain fog, situational ADD, headaches, confusion, irritability, abdominal pain and cramping, constipation, nausea, vomiting, halitosis, which is really bad breath, sleep disruptions, which then by themselves also create weight and metabolic issues, which I've written about in my books, skin issues, hair falling out, dry eyes, orthostatic hypotension, and more. Orthostatic hypotension just means getting dizzy from suddenly standing up. So listen to all that and think, yeah, sure, sign me up for a keto diet. All right? Not. Listen to those lists of health implications: overall fatigue, heavy legs feeling, abrupt weakness, dizziness, brain fog, situational ADD, headaches, confusion, irritability, abdominal pain, cramping, constipation, nausea, vomiting, bad breath, sleep disruption, skin issues, hair falling out, dry eyes, orthostatic hypotension, and more. And really, because some personal trainer in your gym read an article on keto diets, you're just going to follow that up? Or worse, some friend of yours has been on keto for 2 weeks and lost 5 pounds, you're going to do that? It's time to get educated, folks, and that's what I'm here to try to do. So low-carb diets that advocate ketosis is a good thing for fat loss. Overlook that ketosis is, in general, a very bad thing for health. Now, I want to get to something that's really, really important because it's come across my desk recently in a very sad way. Keto diets. Pregnant women are the most at risk. You can't want to have a baby and stay lean at the same time, all right? Acetone, let's talk about keto diets in regards to pregnancy. Acetone and other ketones in the blood during pregnancy can cause brain damage in the fetus. The fact is, ketones, all right, cause significant neurological impairment. These effects are well known and well documented. For instance, Rudolph and Sherman's research article, Maternal Ketosis and Its Effects on the Fetus. That's from the journal Clinics in Endocrinology and Metabolism, issue number 12, 1983. Obesity and Fad Diets. That's from the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs. That's from April 1973. N. Solomon, name of his research article, Improper Dieting, a Health Hazard. That's from the Maryland State Medical Journal, issue number 23, 1974. So why am I telling you all this? Because none of that stopped Dr. Atkins from irresponsibly saying, and I quote, "I recommend my diet to all my pregnant patients." And that's a direct quote from his 1972 Atkins diet revolution. Once again, we see the goal of fad diet books is to sell books, not to necessarily be responsible for the information contained in those books. And this makes me puke because I see the repercussions of that over and over again. And a keto diet can make you sick as well. And just in the last week, I've got 3 emails from 3 different ladies who tried a keto diet and now they're in hell. And that's another topic for another time. So in regards to pregnancy, finally, after considerable pressure on him from the American Medical Association, that's right, the American Medical Association had to intervene and step in. After pressure on him from them for being so flippant and irresponsible, Atkins finally altered his position slightly and admitted, and I quote, "I now understand that ketosis during pregnancy could result in fetal damage. I realize I didn't study enough cases to validate my recommendations." That's from P. Howard and S. Treadwell. Dr. Atkins says he's sorry. That's from the New York Weekly, issue number 26, March 1973. Yet how many of you ever hear of these kind of admissions and mistakes? The academic world remained outraged, and rightly so. Highlighting Atkins' recommendation of low-carb dieting even during pregnancy motivated the writers of one nutrition book at the time to write, and I quote, "Proponents of the low-carb diets have been extraordinarily irresponsible in ignoring these health hazards." And that's from one of the best nutrition books I've ever read, Whitney and Hamilton, Nutrition, Concepts and Controversies, 1982. Happy to say that I got to read their textbook, their nutrition textbook, I think it was called Understanding Nutrition, during my undergrad 3rd-year nutrition course. So all this is reminiscent of the tobacco industry that used to deny smoking was hazardous during pregnancy. At the time all this was blowing up on Atkins and other low-carb diet supporters, one expert in fetal development said this, and I quote, "The woman who goes on a ketogenic diet for 6 months of pregnancy is playing Russian roulette with her baby's health. and that's from M. Mercer, and the name of the research article is called The Atkins Diet, Is It Safe? And that's from McCall's Monthly Newsletter for Women, April 1973. So before I pause here, let me just come to this point then. You want to choose a diet, to follow a diet that can cause birth defects or blindness, requires 65 different supplements in order to balance out the health risk because of the lack of nutrition in the diet itself. You want to follow a diet that experts suggest should only be followed under constant medical supervision, and monitoring of electrolytes is essential to preventing sudden death or kidney issues. You want to follow a diet that research shows negatively impacts physical energy and mental sharpness. You want to follow a diet that may include having to get prescriptions for medications to offset all its side effects, negative side effects. If you want that diet, then the keto diet approach may be for you. If you still got some common sense within you in the face of fad diet fantasy, then run the other way. And for crying out loud, let's not call any of this a fitness diet. That's what bothers me the most. My industry is the worst offender of all. We've got these uneducated, certified personal trainers running around gathering a piece of research here and a piece of research there, not knowing what the hell they're talking about, and putting you all on low carb and or even worse keto diets to watch the water loss on the scale move and pat themselves on the back because they think they're nutritionists. Let's get real. All right, I'll do one more and then I'll pause for some comments. The one-time chair of New York County's Public Health Committee once said this about the Atkins diet, and I quote, "The Atkins diet is potentially dangerous to everyone." And that's from the Houston Chronicle, March 1973. And yes, 1973 was a long time ago, and I'm going to get to why I keep including older studies. The point here is that critique of low-carb diets from real academics and real researchers and truthers, that's been around for as long as these diets have. And as I said, as of yesterday, I posted a new piece of research just out this week that disproves and discounts low-carb diets, disproves the carbs and insulin argument. And if you follow the research as I have, low-carb lies and nonsense have now been debunked for over 60 years. Each and every decade has research showing the lack of viability of low-carb living. So why aren't people paying attention? So let me just pause that for a second, see if we got any comments in here. Yeah, Tony's just saying the potassium connection. We had a couple of guys die from cardiac arrest on the podium from taking slow K. Slow K was a thing again. The wannabe contest prep gurus out there thought they were onto something when they were producing a lot of hypotension by water loading their clients. So they thought, oh, well, we'll just load them up with potassium supplements, not realizing anything about the delicate balance of sodium and potassium ions, and people were having cardiac episodes and issues because of it, a few of them dying. I'm going to get to that. It's coming up, actually, Tony, so you're just a little bit ahead of me there. So Jennifer wants to know, do I recommend a certain percentage of protein, carbs, and fat from calories? Well, yes and no. Let's stop with the counting nonsense. Let's stop with micromanaging. Don't you have better things to think about, feel about, work about, focus on? The more you focus on this, the less you're focusing on things that make life worth living and life worthwhile. So I don't work with numbers anymore. I haven't worked with numbers in a long time. And you can find out why in my book, Understanding Metabolism. So Catherine says, I live in a small town and our local pharmacist recommends and provides foods and supervision for the ketogenic diet. In a small town, local healthcare providers hold a lot of sway. And that's unfortunately true, Catherine, but it's also wrong. As you can see, I'm backing up everything I'm saying with decades of research. So, yeah, I mean, and worse, I mean, there was a research sent to me yesterday, and just commenting on that parents are now putting their kids on keto diets, which can stunt their growth and lead to all kinds of problems. So Perry's just saying academics seldom bother bashing the charlatans. They figure that everyone knows that they're quacks, so why should they bother? They're too busy to fight with the BS. Yeah, I get it, Perry, but someone's got to stand for what the truth is, and so we the sheeple can start learning, that they're being duped. oftentimes it's amazing, that I'm the one who gets attacked for pointing out the objective truth when I don't sell supplements and I don't have a vested interest in these things, where I could make 10 times what I'm making now by being a sellout to the industry. Sherry's just saying, why would anyone do this during pregnancy? It makes no sense. Well, Sherry, I actually had a client who lost her baby over trying to diet while she was pregnant. So, which is unfortunate, and I'm not going to discuss that anymore. But yeah, and I see it all the time. There's ladies who have to spend tens of thousands in fertility treatments, and they don't realize that if they could just stop dieting and put on 10 or 20 pounds, the actual gain in fat would kick everything back in again. Their natural hormonal system would kick in. I have actually helped clients who thought they had fertility issues get pregnant just by stop dieting and gain some weight, even though they were their ego didn't want to do that. They saved tens of thousands of dollars and had successful pregnancies because they just allowed themselves to put on weight. So you're going against yourself if you're female and you're trying to stay at 10% body fat or some ludicrous thing you force your body into, and of course your menses gets disrupted and shut down. That just makes sense. So if you're going to try to stay lean and get pregnant, something's got to give there. Most people aren't fortunate enough to be able to do both. Some are, most aren't. So that's just a side note there. And a little shot at Dr. Atkins. Remember in my first episode, I talked about how he said, fried pork rinds were the best food around, and that bananas were poisonous. Well, Dr. Atkins, I've never heard of a pork rind loading event the night before a marathon or a triathlon or a bodybuilding contest, while carb loading is still widely practiced. So let me get to some more stuff. Just like Dr. Oz, who's sort of a modern Dr. Atkins sellout, Dr. Atkins was also brought before the Senate Investigative House Committee on Fad Diets and had to fess up to some things. And like Dr. Oz, hucksters like this can skirt their way around being held accountable for public endangerment because they have a popular following. So let me get back to the research. And yes, I call Dr. Oz the Wizard of Nonsense. Little play on the Wizard of Oz there. He's definitely just a shill for nonsense half the time. I haven't followed him in ages because he just makes me insane. But in 2004, I'll get back to the research. A review of the Atkins diet was printed in the highly respected medical journal, The Lancet. All right, really highly respected. The study reported that long-term Atkins adherents, and they wrote, if you can even find any, start to suffer headaches, muscle cramps, and diarrhea. And this is consistent with what the author called carbohydrate deficiency. The name of that article is from A. Astrop, and it's called Atkins and Other Low Carbohydrates Diets, Hoax or an Effective Tool for Weight Loss. That's from The Lancet, issue number 364, 2004. Keep that in mind, 2004. This carbohydrate deficiency notion is an interesting term, given low carb and keto diet proponents claim that carbohydrates are completely a non-essential food group classification. The author of this article argues that organs and vital functions start to malfunction because of a lack of blood sugar in the tissues. You can also see a similar article from Bloom and Azar, and the name of that article, research article, Similarities of Carbohydrate Deficiency in Fasting, Weight Loss, Electrolyte Excretion, and Fatigue. That's from the Archives of Internal Medicine, issue number 112. Listen to this, 1963. So this is where 1963. So the Lancet article 2004, and then the article that says basically the same thing from the Archives of Internal Medicine, 1963. So you've got the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and then the article I posted yesterday debunking low carbs. 6 decades of debunking and disproving low carb diets, yet it keeps coming round and round. And what I just said about the effects of what they call carbohydrate deficiency, I talk a lot about that in my book, Metabolic Damage and the Dangers of Dieting. So ironically enough, in a study funded by Atkins himself, most of the people who could in fact stick to an Atkins diet, which is no easy task in itself, they commonly reported headaches and severe bad breath, and 10% suffered hair loss, especially women. And I'm going to get to some women-only things in a minute. You'll want to stay wrapped for that. Very concerning in terms of health, though, in terms of an Atkins low-carb diet, over 70% of the patients in the study, his own study, lost the ability to have a normal bowel movement. Now, this is the name of the study. It's from W.S. Yancey, AL, a low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet versus a low-fat diet to treat obesity and hyperlipidemia, a randomized controlled trial. That's from the Annals of Internal Medicine, issue number 140, 2004. Now, constant constipation is a major health issue. So the fact that people go on low-carb diets and then have constant constipation, all these side effects, folks, this is the language of the body. This is your body trying to communicate with you that you're hurting it. But of course, weight loss comes first. So, you know, better to die young and thin and to have a ton of health issues than to actually live a happy life at a few higher pounds. So that 2004 study in the Annals of Internal Medicine was taken by Atkins completely out of context to support the Atkins diet, but that study showed that the Atkins dieters suffer from headaches and constipation, and that these low-carb dieters experience far more general malaise and conditions, more like diarrhea, skin rashes, muscle cramps, ironically enough, in spite of taking all 65 supplements that Atkins prescribed to make up for lost nutrients that come in those nasty, evil carbohydrates. So it's just ridiculous to me that all this stuff passes any kind of smell test of legitimacy in a consumer's mindset. But that's how heavy wish bias works when it comes to the psychology of weight loss and diets. A desperate mind is likely to believe anything sold as a promise. But that is the consumer mindset. If you're in the fitness industry, then how dare you recommend such protocols and call it part of a fitness lifestyle? Shame on you if you do that, and share this part of my lecture to anyone in the fitness industry you know of on the gym floor touting such nonsense. It makes me puke. So if anyone you know out there is a low carb arguer, let's have that debate. I'm all willing. Tell them, ask me, tell them my name, tell us where to show up and at what time, and I'll show up, and you bring your research and I'll bring mine. But shame on anyone in the fitness industry who argues this stuff is part of a healthy fitness lifestyle. It's anything but. So sorry for that sidetrack. Brain fog, also been known, long-term effect of these low-carb keto diets. Studies started reflecting that reality. One study in 1995 compared ketogenic to non-ketogenic diets by randomly assigning people to either one. Both groups lost the same amount of weight, so there was no advantage, no superiority of a keto diet there. They both lost the same amount of weight. But that conclusion, all right, it was a study of what diet was better for weight loss. They broke even, but all of that was overshadowed by the clear observations that people on the ketogenic diet suffered measurable and significant drops in cognitive performance. After only 1 week in a state of ketosis, higher order mental processing significantly worsened into what researchers called, and I quote, modest neurophysiological impairment. 1 week in ketosis, and people suffer modest neurophysiological impairment. So a low-carb diet, not only is it not good for your health, it can really make you stupid as well. And that's from R. Wing and AL, and the research article is called Cognitive Effects of Ketogenic Weight Reducing Diets, and that's you can read that in the International Journal of Obesity, issue number 19, 1995. So again, I ask you, why aren't you hearing about any of this? For the Atkins diet specifically, or any low-carb diet, but in my experience, this applies to all low-carb diets, especially ketogenic ones. These diets impair emotional functioning as well. Research at MIT, one of the most respected universities on the planet, stated that an Atkins-type diet, low to no carbs, is likely to make many people irritable and depressed. Here's what you need to know. And then they said, ... especially women. All right, but who's more likely to go on low-carb, keto nonsense diets? Women. Who's more likely to become irritable and depressed and emotionally stunted from going on such diets? Women. The MIT researchers found that the brain only seemed to make enough serotonin, the feel-good, positive mood regulator, when a person ate enough carbohydrates. So again, who suffers the most from low-carb keto type diets in terms of emotional function? Women, all right? the MIT researchers found that the brain only seemed to make enough serotonin to regulate positive mood when a person ate enough carbohydrates. By starving the brain of carbs, the researchers say you negatively impact mood regulator serotonin, and this can make you restless, irritable, depressed, and even volatile. And they noted that women under stress and taking antidepressants may be the most at risk if combining this with low-carb dieting of the Atkins kind. So this is where I pause and go, well, I see a lot of women, they become new mothers, they gain a little bit of weight, their life is stressful because it's no longer their own anymore. They get on antidepressants, but they've also gained some weight, so they try low-carb dieting. Well, you talk about the worst case scenario in terms of inviting in emotional drain and depression. So all those combined, you know, I wrote down in my notes, it may not be the expression bitches be crazy, but it may and should be low carb dieting bitches be crazy. So do yourself a favor when you hear the benefits of low carb diets, turn your bullshit radar detector way up in volume. And so the name of that is in MIT News, issue number 20, February 2004. And that's from E.A. Thompson. And the article is called Carbs Are Essential for Effective Dieting and Good Mood. Carbs are essential for effective dieting and good mood. Okay? Who wants to live with someone who's constantly crunching out their macros and is becoming helter-skelter crazy because of their diet? And dieting can make you actually crazy. So this is what we're seeing here. Furthermore, that same article on this research, the director of Women's Health Program at MIT Research Center, Judith Wertman, warned that filling up on fatty foods instead, like bacon and cheese, can have physiological effects of making you tired, lethargic, and feeling apathetic, like not caring about anything. Eating a lot of fat, she said, and I'll quote, can make you an emotional zombie. All right, and that's from the same MIT News Journal, issue number 20, February 2004, name of the article, Carbs Are Essential for Effective Dieting and Good Mood. So anybody, any spouse of any female fitness competitor, or you yourself, if you've competed and follow low carbs for a stretch of time to peak your physique, you know all about these above 2 bullet points, that low carbs can make you crazy, depressed, apathetic, all those kind of things. So your emotional health on a low carb diet is also at risk. And let's get real about getting real with this, right? So let me get back to the constipation thing for a minute. I'm almost done this week. What started with Atkins carried on to other low carb diets, and which is this, an acknowledgement of constipation constantly across the board, no matter what type of low carb diet you're on, and a recommendation of supplementation like Metamucil to do something about it. Atkins even contradicted himself by acknowledging the benefits of fiber while noting that the best sources of fiber tend to be in those nasty and evil carbohydrate sources. To Atkins, Mother Nature just screwed things up by putting such a healthy thing as fiber into such nasty and poisonous foods like carbs. And remember, Atkins in his first book called Carbs Poisonous, even though something like a banana is filled with biotin and B6 and vitamin C and fiber and all the good things that nature provides. So remember that one study actually funded by Atkins himself found that over 70% of people on the Atkins diet suffered from constipation. Over 70%. Atkins himself admitted nearly all his patients were constipated. All his patients were constipated. And instead of retweaking his diet and thinking there might be something wrong with it, he just dismiss it. And that's in the book Carbophobia, page 79. This is just another example of how myopic consumers and diet hucksters are when it comes to diet. As long as short-term results are weight scale decreases, then the health risks don't seem to matter. But they do matter. And of course, this is ridiculous, and it illustrates people's obsession with diet promise for weight loss over real concern for health and well-being. Once again, something like constant constipation is a form of communication from your body to you that something isn't right. So I get peeved when people write me and they pay lip service to wanting to be healthy and taking care of themselves and want to feel better, but really what they want is weight loss first, and they just pay lip service. Well, I want to be healthy, but I want to be ripped and look like I can step on a stage as well. Well, those two things aren't always compatible. So let's get real about getting real there as well. So experts and nutritional investigators who were trying to educate the public at the time, none of that seems to matter when it comes to the low carb craze, right? Atkins, South Beach, The Zone. Back when Atkins diet first came out, the Consumer Guide rated the Atkins diet 0 out of 4 stars and called it outrageously dangerous. And then almost 30 years later, the editor of the Healthy Weight Loss Journal, gave the Atkins diet the Slim Chance in Hell Award for the worst diet. I remember back in my day myself being attacked because the bodybuilding community had embraced the Zone diet at the time, formulated by a doctor, so that meant something. And I labeled the diet as being moot when it came to physique transformation and peaking for a contest, and everyone came out swinging at me. This is just like diet as religion, is what I called it back then. It was like I was attacking people's religion because they had this newfound religion to follow. But that's not how things work. So you can find more on that on the 2 things I just mentioned: Consumer Guide rating the diets from Publications International in 1974, and then the year 2000 Slim Chance Awards from the Healthy Weight Network. So with Atkins and paleo and all the rest of these eat meat first diets, they choose to ignore some pretty important research and information. For instance, an article in the New England Journal of Medicine 2004 documented the effects of meat intake on the risk of gout. Okay, this long-term study followed 50,000 men for 12 years, long-term and large population-based. That's what you're looking for in legitimate studies. 50,000 men for 12 years, and found that each additional serving of meat was associated with a 21% increase in the risk of gout, and gout is wicked painful. So yet these low-carb nonsense diets recommend more and more meat of all kinds, and yet just an additional single serving increases your risk of gout 21%, and that becomes higher and higher as you age. You can find that from H.K. Choi, A.L., and the name of the research article is Purine-Rich Foods, Dairy and Protein Intake and the Risk of Gout in Men, New England Journal of Medicine, issue number 350, 2004, and S. Kahn, his article is called Galloping Gout is Blamed on Fad Diets. All right, and that's from the journal The Observer, January 2004. But despite the myriad of dangerous to your health side effects of ketosis, pushers of this nonsense continue to emphasize that dieters on low-carb diets should repeatedly test your urine to make sure that you stay in this ridiculously risky emergency state, metabolic state. Not only is this foolish for all the above reasons that I've been arguing in this lecture, but this kind of thing can breed psychologically unhealthy diet and food obsessions as well. I have people who now are emotionally stunted when it comes to food. They don't know how to enjoy food anymore. Everything is about guilt and shame, and that's pathetic. And they're blaming themselves when they should be just stepping away from the nonsense. And yet Atkins himself, this is part of the reason why this happens, he glorifies ketosis, this unhealthy state, metabolic state, by describing it as, and I quote, as delightful as sunshine and sex. Okay, ketosis is as delightful as sunshine and sex. And that's from the actual quote from the Atkins New Diet Revolution, 2002, page 57. And yet, to my mind, statements like these should throw up red flags to anyone reading such nonsense about restrictive diets. Really, as gratifying as sunshine and sex? I don't know too many things that are as gratifying as sunshine and sex. I had chocolate eclairs for breakfast and 3 slices of carrot cake and a quart of milk, and I wouldn't equate either one to being as delightful as sunshine and sex. So, duh. But this is what happens in the consumer's mindset, trying to trick people. To my mind, the updated version of the Atkins diet book that's given birth to so many other low-carb approaches to make money, South Beach, paleo, the rest of it. In reality, his book should be renamed from New Diet Revolution to New Diet Revulsion, based on the real science that I've presented to you today. In Michael Greger's book, Carbophobia, 2006, he says, and I quote, "Thankfully, the short-term side effects of low-carb keto diets are often so unpleasant that people don't even stick to the diet for very long." And that's from, 2005, page 31. I think I'm almost getting down to the bottom of it, but I wanted to get a lot done today, folks. So hopefully you're still hanging with me. I'll come back. Let me just finish this and I'll come back to the comments. At one time during the height of the Atkins low-carb diet craze, the Cleveland Clinical Journal of Medicine, a very respected journal, C.L. Moore pointed out that all physicians should produce a handout warning about all the adverse health effects of the Atkins diet. And this includes, let me just recap, dizziness, headaches, confusion, nausea, fatigue, sleep problems, irritability, bad breath, pronounced worsening of gout and kidney problems, osteoporosis, risk of hip fracture in older women, a rise in blood pressure with age, and orthostatic hypotension, and for the long-term increased risk of heart disease, cancer, and stroke. All right, that's a list of healthy compromise for going on a low-carb diet to lose some weight. And yet the consumer continues to ignore any such information in exchange for the promise of weight loss. You can find that. The article is called The Dangers of Self-Monitored Dieting. What are our patients really doing? And that's from the Cleveland Clinic Journal of Medicine, issue number 68, 2001. A 2002 review of low carbohydrate type diets listed a frightening scroll of health issues, also following under the umbrella of what I later termed metabolic damage. Here's some I want to get to, and Tony, this is what you mentioned earlier, so let me get to that. Complications include heart arrhythmias. I've seen this many times in people who come to me on low-carb diets. Other risks include risk of type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, kidney damage, impairment of physical activity, and many other abnormalities that can be linked to long-term restriction of carbs in the diet, going back to that Lancet article from 2004. And that Lancet article, now I'll use their overall conclusion in the article, Atkins and Other Low-Carb Diets, hoax or an effective tool for weight loss. Their overall conclusion, low carbohydrate diets cannot be recommended. Low carbohydrate diets cannot be recommended. As to the heart issue, and this goes to what Tony was saying, in the fitness industry, I've seen consequences of people on low carb keto diet nonsense, combining them with various stimulants to work out, fat burners, caffeine pills, energy drinks. The result, a very scary sudden cardiac issue or event. A former client of mine, wasn't my client at the time, thank goodness, because I couldn't get behind his craziness, but he died on the gym floor of a massive heart attack at age 44. And I've got a dozen stories that back that kind of thing up. So in fact, let me just say here, getting near the conclusion, a low carb diet is in fact, and I've spent the whole hour explaining this to you, and let's get to the conclusion. A low carb diet is a low nutrition, low health, low wellness, low vitality, low viability, low sustainability diet. So why on earth are you keep hearing about it like it's some kind of magic formula? In a 2004 review, it was concluded low carbs could lead to a serious danger of malnutrition over the long term. And quote, some people have become so deficient on low carb and ketogenic diets that they almost went blind because their optic nerve started to degenerate. They almost went blind because their optic nerve started to regenerate. Really, is losing some pounds worth your eyesight? And that's from Kapagogata, I can't say that right, and E.A. Amsterdam. And the name of that article is Low Carbohydrate, High Protein Diets. Is there a place for them in clinical cardiology? And that's from the Journal of American College of Cardiology, issue number 43, 2004. So you can see my research is all over the board, from obesity research to internal medicine research to College of Cardiology research to ophthalmology research. So I leave you with this question and the answer. In this lecture, I have now over the last several weeks, I've showed you research spanning 6 decades, from the 60s onward, that debunks and disproves low carb diets or that carbs themselves cause weight gain. I've spent the last 4 weeks lecturing you for an hour each lecture. This should have been a workshop that I charge hundreds of dollars for. And I've showed you research spanning 6 decades that debunk and disprove the viability of low carb diets and disprove that carbs make you fat. So with 6 decades of disproving the viability of low carb diets, why do you suppose they keep reappearing in some form about every 3 to 5 years? All right, think about that. Well, the reason they keep appearing isn't because they work, it's because publishing profits and people's hunger for nonsense. Remember, publishers, Atkins books sold 15 million copies. Do you know how much profit that is for Atkins and publishers? So what sells the most for publishing companies? Diet books. What do people have a hunger for? And I use the term as a pun, hunger. Don't forget 2/3 of a pun is PU. People's hunger for nonsense. They want secrets and not responsibility, right? So every 3 to 5 years, you're going to see this repackaged in some form that South Beach turns into paleo. Paleo will turn into something else, all right? And that's because publishing profits. It's all about selling books. If you can sell 5-10 million books, then you make a fortune for publishers and you make a fortune for the authors. And then the general public remains in the dark and ready for another miracle solution in another 3 to 5 years. So that's why you keep seeing this come around every 3 to 5 years, because it's a marketing bonanza for publishers and payoffs. And you've got to start learning to that, or you become we the sheeple, one of we the sheeple. So now I'm back on board, folks. I'm going to read your comments. Sorry that took me so long, but it was really, really, really important that I got to all of that research for you. So spanning 6 decades. So like I said, you find some keto, paleo pundit in your gym, and they want to have a debate with me. You tell me the date and the time, and I'll show up, and you get them to show up, and we'll have at it. I doubt you'll get any takers. Jason says, I have the alpha-gal allergy, the mammalian meat allergy from a tick bite, and so have been forced to give up all red meats and products. In doing so, I switched to a pescatarian type diet, mainly focused on healthy whole foods. Yep. Whole grains, veggies, yep. And your digestive tract's so much happier than it's been in years. Energy level, fantastic. And without even trying, you lost 15 pounds. Yep, that's all. Falls in line with what the research says, Jason, but people don't want to hear it, especially women. Now, folks, I was busy reading my notes for this lecture, but when I got to the part on women and depression and emotional health and emotional stability, I hope that didn't fall on deaf ears. So throw some thumbs and some hearts across the screen if you heard me about the research that reflected that, because it's a vicious circle that ladies get into when they think that a quick low-carb diet help them lose weight, when they don't realize their emotional health is at stake. And that's another thing that just frosts my buns. So I'm tired of being someone who cares and gets attacked for caring, when I could just jump on the bandwagon and make a ton more money by telling you if it fits your macros, or that your macros should be 5% less than some other guru because 5% makes a difference. Let's just freaking stop the nonsense. Protege Andy Sinclair's on board, and he's just reminding me of a very very popular quote from 7-time Olympia, I think it was 7, maybe 8-time Olympia, Lee Haney. I was speaking at a symposium with Lee Haney, and he was the featured speaker. And at the time, Atkins was real popular. The low carb diets were really popular. I appreciate the thumbs and the hearts, folks. I'm glad you were listening. And one of the questions from someone in the audience, it was a nutritionist, said to Lee Haney, what do you think about the Atkins diet? And Lee Haney gave a brilliant friggin' answer that fell on most deaf ears, because people were Vogue trend followers and they just chalked it up to Lee Haney not having an academic education. But the question at the time, and Atkins was really popular in the bodybuilding community, low carbs was gaining traction in the bodybuilding community. So the person puts up their hand, was a nutritionist, and says, well, Lee Haney, what do you think of the Atkins diet? And without missing a beat, 8-time Mr. Olympia, Lee Haney said, all I can say is I doubt Dr. Atkins ever trained for a Mr. Olympia contest. So that was brilliant. And it just showed that you need carbs to work out. And Lee Haney knew it naturally. He didn't need a PhD in nutrition to tell him that, because he was hanging and banging in the gym at the Mr. Olympia level. And you try to work out hard without carbs, and you tell me that's sustainable, and I'll show you a liar every single time. And Tracy Lynn says it's sad that people confuse being thin and lean with being healthy, but women tend to associate those two things all the time, Tracy Lynn. I get letters every week from ladies who equate the two. They say, oh, I just want to lose weight and be lean and healthy. And I look at their pictures, and they're already lean and a normal weight, but they want to get leaner, which would make them unhealthy. And yet they keep equating the two because of unrealistic expectations in their mind. And you see, I just produced the research on how bad that is for organ health, brain health, and all the things that happen there. So Yeah, and Gus says, I see low carb dieters reaching to energy boosters even from very early in the diet. And yeah, I mean, very, very dangerous. I've seen cardiac issues over and over again. I've had people, here's something, folks. I've actually had people scared straight back into carbohydrate-based diets because of what I mentioned about heart health, low carbers, and they start taking fat burners and caffeine just to get through the day. And then they start spiking coffee with caffeine pills and fat burners, and they end up in the emergency ward with heart palpitations and erratic heartbeat, and a few have had heart attacks. Yeah, and very, very significant. And some, like I said, were scared straight. So Moyen Laird says, love my passion. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Perry says, keep it coming. Perry, you keep coming with my editing, buddy. I need that soon. But I'm away next week, so hold off till I get back. Yeah, so folks, you know, I'm trying to impart what decades of research has shown. You know, I don't come at you with an opinion. I come at you with an informed, educated, academic, experienced, qualified opinion, and I think there's a difference in that. So stop chasing social media for knowledge. Dig deep, get your hands dirty, get her done. Lots of comments on the Wallabies shirt. Appreciate that. Yeah, just something I threw on. So hopefully you guys, you've benefited from this. I think I have about 2 lectures left on the low carb lies and nonsense. Please tell your friends. This will be reposted, and later, of course, it gets posted to my YouTube channel as well. So I appreciate all you guys coming out early in the morning or what time you're at. I appreciate all the thumbs and hearts that I'm seeing. But more important, folks, is to share. Hit your share button instead of the like button, and get people educated, because I'm tired of seeing good people who are writing me every week who have been fried their system because of low carb and keto nonsense. Just because someone told them, you know, oh, someone told me to try it. Well, you know, that's very, very dangerous stuff, of course. So someone told me to try heroin once, but I didn't do it. So let's get real about getting real. And, you know, next week I'll continue on. I think I'm down to the final 2 lectures. And like I said, this would have been otherwise an online workshop, but you know, I keep doing it here. So all the best to everybody. I hope you have a great Sunday. I'm about to go hanging and banging. So I will see you all, if not on my Facebook page earlier, then I'll see you all Breakfast with the Coach next Sunday. And please spread the word. This will get posted on my Facebook page within the hour. I think Facebook posts it. And please hit the share button and get people talking. So, you know, even if they don't agree, get them talking, and that's good with me. And like I said, you have some trainer in your gym who's following paleo or some other low carb nonsense, and they want to have the debate with me. You tell them, you know, don't show up with a penknife to a gunfight, and make sure they're there, and I'll show up at the same time and same channel. I got 4 decades experience doing this. No one in this industry intimidates what I know and my level of experience. So having said that, I will see you guys next week, and thanks for being out there. If you weren't, it wouldn't make much sense for me being here. So hasta next time, folks.